Hello everyone, welcome to our weekly. This is Foxville. Perhaps you've never heard of it, but we're right here in Stafford Springs. So Foxville is part of that. You can see around is near the Bittersweet shop. And if we look at this vacant lot, perhaps you remember the old Stafford Springs Fire Department and the Stafford Springs Highway Department. Foxville was founded by Charlie Fox. He was born in 1827 and died in 1891. Like most of our villages, I believe all of our villages were built around a mill. And Charlie built a mill called Fox Mill, which now is down where the printers was by the river. With so many people working near their factory or mill, they had a school for the children. So here today we're going to talk about the Foxville School, which was number 2 on your school map. And you can see it's the brick building in the distance. We'll go over to this school was built in 1854, as was the Springs School, which we will go to next. The first school in Foxville was built near the German Club, which is now the site of the Trinity Church, which is close by, and actually was the corner of West Main and Green Street, which is about where that Trinity Church is. But this school was built in 1854, as we said, a 2-room schoolhouse. This had seats for 100 students, but at one time in the 1870s there were as many as 120 students. Some were sitting on the steel poles of their seats that were broken, and some people said it would be better to hang the students by the collar on the coverts, but I'm not sure they tried that. Eventually, some of the younger grades were moved up to the Pettibone House up on Hyde Street to alleviate the pressure on this school. And eventually, when they built the new school up on High Street, both this Foxville School and the Springs School were consolidated and moved up there. Here we are on School Street. Imagine that, there's a school on School Street. This was not the first school, however. Before I begin, let me apologize for saying that boys should have been hung on the coat hooks. I was quoting. I'm sure the correct word is hanged there. But back to our schoolhouse. Quite similar to that in Foxville. Of course, this was 1850, built in 1854 as well. But prior to that, first school was at the corner of Wellington Avenue, on Wellington Avenue and East Main. It wasn't much of a schoolhouse. They often had it in people's houses. Sometimes it was in the Springs house. Sometimes it was in the shoemaker's house. The Chandler house, I remember, it was also used for a time. But this one, built again in 1854, is a 2-room schoolhouse. Last week's quiz question was, how many school districts were there in the town of Stafford? It turns out that only one person called in from a distance was Thankful Rood. Thankful was her first name, Rood, R-O-O-D. That's an old Stafford name, maybe she's related. The answer to that question is 18. Most districts we had. 7 in the West District and 11 in the East District. This week's question is, where was the first school in Stafford?